Janice is still home in bed, not feeling well. Need to keep her in our prayers. Keep Brother Terry in your thoughts and prayers also, with all his medicine and different ailments. He also told me this morning that Rosie had talked to him and that Tina is in the hospital. Don't know the whys. And also we had mentioned a while back that Betty Toole had some major work done, and she's been in and out and back in the hospital. So need to keep all those in our thoughts and prayers. And as we're coming up to holiday season, all the travelers and everything. I had somebody mention my tie this morning, and I said, coming up on 80 years, I don't know how many people remember this or not, but 80 years ago on a Sunday, of course it'd be, this year it's going to be on Tuesday the 7th, but December the 7th, so need to remember that. Anything else? Brother Bobby, would you lead us in a prayer, please?
Time and attention in our lives, Lord, guide us, direct us, in Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. I don't know about you, but I have thoroughly been enjoying the study of the book of Daniel. That's one of my favorites among many. And the first 8 chapters we've gone through have been relatively simple because they tell you what's going on. They interpret themselves a lot. When we get to chapter 9, well, let me back up just a second. We've also mentioned that the book of Daniel is not in chronological order from first chapter all the way through, and first 4 chapters were, and then we'll tell you how the next 4 were mixed up. And when we get into the last set, there's also, in these last 4 chapters, varying ideas of the order that these books or these chapters are chronologically. Not going to be dogmatic, not going to say I'm right, but when we get to the book of chapter 9, there's probably been more written about this one chapter in the book of Daniel than any other chapter, and also a couple of sections in it that have had thousands of pages written. I will admit I have not read most of them, so I'm not an authority. But from my study, what I think is that in the last 4 chapters that we're dealing with, 9, 10, 11, and 12, that the order would be 11, 10, 12, and 9. I think chapter 9 was the last one written, and I'll explain that when we get to it in just a minute. But I want to start off in the book of Jeremiah. Yes, we're doing a study on Daniel, but I think we need to start in the book of Jeremiah, which will hopefully help me explain a little bit about chapter 9. If today I manage to pique your interest or tweak an imagination and have you go home and do some hard study on your own on this, I've accomplished my task for the day. I see Brother Day over there grinning at me, so he knows where I'm going with this, I think. So let's start with Jeremiah chapter 1 and read verses 1 and 2. It says, "The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, of the priests that were in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of the Lord came in the days of Josiah, the son of Amon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign." Now, I wanted to do this because when I go to the next section of Jeremiah and some prophecy, I want to give you some time frames here. We can pick up from secular history and biblical history that if we are in the 13th year of Josiah's reign, we're about 627 BC. This is before the carrying away, the three carryings away of Jerusalem, Israel into Babylon. So all of this is getting into prophecy. Now, also, if we will go to chapter 52 of Jeremiah, and if we start with verse 11, it says, "Then he put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and the king of Babylon bound him in chains and carried him into Babylon and put him in prison till the day of his death. Now in the 5th month and the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, which served the king of Babylon, into Jerusalem, and burned the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and all the houses of great men, burned he with fire, and all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard brake down all the walls of Jerusalem round about them." The question is, when he put out the eyes of Zedekiah, bound him and carried him off to Babylon and put him in prison, and it was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, what year was it on our timeline? It would have been the third and final carrying away, 586 BC. Why is that important? To know that it was in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar that this was going to happen. Let's see if we can figure that out when we get to Daniel. Starting with verse 1. "In the 1st year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans." Who is Darius, the son of Ahasuerus of the seed of the Medes? Is he the same person that was mentioned in chapter 5, verse 31? The Mede that came in and destroyed and killed Belshazzar? Or the king, or the one mentioned in chapter 6, verse 1? Why would they call him the seed of the Medes if that were true? If we look at a historical setting and you go through, he is probably down into the he is not that Darius, he is not the Darius that came in and killed Belshazzar. He is the son of, so he's getting down there. This is the time framing that we're looking at now is somewhere around 523 or so, and it goes all the way down into 516. Now, why is 516 important? And this ties with 586. What is 70 from 586? 516. You see, there's many people when we get to the book of Daniel that they want the 70 years of captivity. They want the 70 years to begin in 605 with the first carrying away of the children and others. And then there is a second carrying away. And then at the third one, that is when Jerusalem was annihilated. That's when the walls were broken down. That's when the temple was destroyed. That's when the things were carried off. So if we look back into Jeremiah chapter 52, in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, 586, that is when the destruction of Jerusalem happened. It wasn't with a couple of carryings away at the beginning. We're saying this because I'm trying to put things in a timeline here. So let's look at verse 2. "In the 1st year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years." What books are we referring to? Daniel was referring to Jeremiah. So by reading Jeremiah, he understood the number of years. Whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. This verse, I think, at least to me, is crucial because it is talking about the desolation of Jerusalem. Did the desolation occur when they carried off Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, put them in the king's palace? Zedekiah was still king. They still had kings in Judah. The desolation occurred in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, when he put out the eyes of the last king, took him to Babylon, and destroyed the temple in the city. So why 70 years are we looking at? That he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation. Why 70 years? Why not 50, 40, 30? Let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 36 and verse 21. Second Chronicles 36 and verse 21. Now let's back up to verse 20 and put it in context. And then they had escaped from the sword, carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the king of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she keeps Sabbaths, to fulfill 70 years. There is a connection there that it is for 70 years, 70, for a specific reason. And that specific reason was ties back into the Sabbaths. You see, apparently they had not, every 7 years they were supposed to let the land lay fallow and not do anything with it. Apparently that hadn't happened for generations. So if we take that 70 years and 70 Sabbaths and go back 70 times 7, that's 490 years. That's 5 centuries that they had not been doing this. So this was a year for year type punishment. So we're looking at then from 586, the total annihilation of it, until things started turning back around in 516. I've done all the talking. Somebody else speak up.
It amazes me that you could sit there and explain that in about 6 minutes, and they've written millions of words on it about 70 weeks is this and that and other. Makes no sense whatsoever.
I made no sense, or the
writers made no sense.
oh,
The commentators.
talking about the 70 years?
Correct.
Well, does my explanation hold water? Okay.
I was going to say that earlier when you said why 70, I said because God said so.
Well, God said so. And that's going to tie in with another section when we get to it at the end of the chapter. So, but questions, comments, or? Okay. In essence, verse 3 all the way down to about verse 20 or so deals with Daniel in prayer or in confession or in speech, or however combination you want to put it, is just talking about things. I'm going to stray a little bit and read that whole section, and then we'll start talking about something that follows on. So if you'll follow with me, please, starting with verse 3. And I set my face unto the Lord to seek by prayer and supplications with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed unto the Lord my God and made my confession and said, O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping the covenant and mercy to them that love him and to them that keep his commandments. We have sinned and have committed iniquity and have done wickedly and have rebelled, even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgments. Neither have we hearkened unto thy servants and prophets, which spake in the name to our kings, our princes, and our fathers, not to all the people of the land. O Lord, righteousness belongeth unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces, as at this day, to the men of Judah, and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and unto all Israel that are near and that are far off, though all the countries whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespass that they have trespassed against thee. O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, and to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. To the Lord our God belong mercy and forgiveness, though we have rebelled against him. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God, to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants the prophets. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured out upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. And he hath confirmed the words which he spake against us and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil, for under the whole heaven hath not been done as hath been done upon Jerusalem. As it is written in the law of Moses, all this evil is come upon us. Yet made we not our prayer before the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand thy truth. Therefore hath the Lord watched upon the evil and brought it upon us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he doeth, for we obeyed not his voice. And now, O Lord our God, that hast brought thy people forth out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand, and hast gotten thee renown, as at this day we have sinned and we have done wickedly. O Lord, according to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee, let thine anger and thy fury be turned away from the city of Jerusalem, thy holy mountain, because for our sins and for the iniquities of our fathers, Jerusalem and thy people are become a reproach to all that are about us. Now therefore, O our God, hear the prayer of thy servant and his supplications, and cause thy face to shine upon the sanctuary that is desolate for the Lord's sake. O my God, incline thine ear and hear, open thine eyes and behold our desolations in the city which is called by thy name. For we do not present our supplications before thee for our righteousnesses, but for thy great mercies. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, hearken and do. Defer not, for thine own sake, O my God, for thy city and thy people are called by thy name. As I said, that is basically Daniel talking to God and recounting the situation that has gone on. Then when we look at the next verse, verse 20, he says, And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplications before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God, yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. Now we're going to get down to a little intervention. Who is Gabriel? Messenger from God. Verse 22 is interesting because he tells him what he's there for. He informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. What had Daniel always told the kings when he was interpreting a dream? He always gave God the credit for giving him the information that was necessary. Verse 23 says, "At the beginning of thy supplications the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore understand the matter and consider the vision." So what's Gabriel telling Daniel at this point?
As soon as you started praying, I was dispatched to come and see you.
You're well loved. I was dispatched to give you this information. Pay attention. Now here's where we get into the next section that thousands of pages have been written about. And
Before we get there,
yes, sir.
how beautiful is that statement when coming from God, you said greatly beloved and New American Standard is highly esteemed. God thought of Daniel in that frame.
That should be each and every one of our ambitions or goals, is to be thought of by God as highly as Daniel was. Beautiful phrase.
Daniel, ancient. Gotta be.
We
Maybe mid-90s.
we have already gone through in a previous lesson or so and brought Daniel up to date when in 539, when Babylon was invaded and Darius killed Belshazzar. That was 539, and Daniel was taken captive in 605. When we have estimated Daniel as being a teenager, 15, 16, 17 years of age. So 539 to 605 is how many years? Huh? You're not good at math.
She says 45.
Well, let's do it this way. And let's start at 539. 49, 59, 69, 79, 89, 99. So that's 60, about 65 years. And then if he's 15 years old, that's 65, 75. That's putting him at 80. And now, if my theory on this is correct, and this is the last chapter that was written, and we're down looking at the year 516 when it comes to a culmination, he's going to be something around the 100 mark or a little over 100 somewhere. So he is getting to be an old man, as you say, at this point. But this next section, as I say, is one that gets talked about a lot. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, and upon thy holy city. I want to pause there. We had been reading about 70 years, and now all of a sudden Gabriel stops and says 70 weeks. Why the change? And I've had to do a lot of research on this and through the years, and Brother Terry has been to school and knows this, and Sister Mong is taking Hebrew, so she can help me out here. But it is my understanding from all that I have read and studied that 70 weeks is talking about 70 times 7. In other words, the 70 is a 7, and a week being a 7-day week. And I don't know exactly how to explain it, but if 70 times the week of 7 comes up to 490, what had we just discussed about the 70 Sabbaths before that? Brother Clunch, you got a better way to express it? I say you got a better way to explain that 70 weeks really means 70 times 7?
I think that's correct. This part of Daniel is a lot like Revelation, because it's talking with figures and numbers, and so it's a little bit different as far as the way we look at things.
Okay.
Footnote in the New American Standard says units of 7.
Units of 7, okay. So, if we tie that in, we had just previously, before I did all that chapter's reading, discussed how they was talking about the Sabbaths and how that covered 490 years. Well, the 70 weeks times the 7 here, we're back to 490. So that's giving us a tie-in. And then I want you to pay real close attention to the rest of this, because most people, when they're studying this section, they immediately go to the numbers. What do all the numbers mean? But look what is said next. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Shift gears. To finish the transgression. To make an end of sins. To make reconciliation for iniquity. To bring in everlasting righteousness. To seal up the vision and prophecy. And to anoint the most holy. Who is the most holy? Jesus? Christ? So, I'm going to take a stretch before we read the rest of this. If we start with the most holy and back up, when did Christ die on the cross? When did the new covenant come into play? When did the old law and everything go away? AD 30 to AD 33, it depends on which you read and calendar you use. And most of the people for years thought 33. I personally for years thought 30 for various reasons. Because if we really get into a study of it, we all know by Scripture that Christ was born at least in 4 BC, because history tells us who died in 4 BC and that he was alive when the child Christ was born. So if we look at that, if we go to 30 AD, then we're looking at 34. Christ would have been about 34 years old in 30 AD, and it would have been about 37 in 33 AD. Well, most people want to put him dying on the cross in his mid to earlier 30s rather than his later 30s. But as Brother Day said, somewhere between 30 and 33 AD. Now, I want you to do some math for me. Let's round it off at 30 AD. If we go backward in time 490 years, what year do we come to? Pardon? 460. If we go from 33 AD, we're at 457. What major event happened between 460 and 457 BC? When was Ezra sent back to Jerusalem? 458. Brother Day says Christ was crucified somewhere between 30 and 33 AD. If we back up 490 years that we're talking about time, Ezra was sent back. And what was Ezra sent back to Jerusalem to do? Was he to physically rebuild? He was there to reestablish the proper worship. I see a connection there. Do you? Or am I way out there stretching it too far? 'Cause I've already admitted I'm not an expert on this. I hadn't read all the materials. I wasn't there.
Looking at these, you think about verse 24, it's taking in a whole lot more than just, we're going back, we get out of captivity and go home. It encompasses a lot more than that. You can't read it and say it doesn't.
And what did it make, if you look at all of them connected, finished transgressions, end of sins, reconciliation for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness. What brings in everlasting righteousness? Christ's crucifixion. He was the final sacrifice. That's how I'm tying it all together. Questions, comments? Somebody please. Brother.
I don't think you can, even though our writer separates the two divisions here in chapter 9, the first part of chapter 9, Daniel's talking about all the sin and everything they've been guilty of. And now it's said, okay, how does that happen? When does it ultimately take place? Because he goes back all the way to Egypt, really, and then talks about why they were carried into captivity in Assyria and Babylon. And he says, you're asking for forgiveness. When is it going to ultimately really come?
And when does it ultimately come? The death of Christ. Which would then do completely away with all that. Y'all are letting me off easy today. I thought there'd be a lot more. Verse 25, then through the end of the book, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of commandments to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, and now we're dividing things down, shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself and the people of the prince that shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Again, I want to back into this just a little bit. This last week that takes place, if that last week is actually a 7-year period of time, what happens with Christ the last 7 years of his life? It says, in the midst he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. What would be the midst of his last 7 years? It would be 3.5 years, wouldn't it? What happened the last 3.5 years of his life? What was he preaching? The new way. The new covenant, not the sacrificing that you've been doing, not what you've been doing. What happened the first 3.5 years of that last 7 years? Who was going about doing the preaching? John the Baptist, preparing the way for Christ to come in and take over and preach the new covenant. At least that is my estimate of the way chapter 9 fits together and where things start and end. As I say, I am not an expert on it. I don't. If you ask me, are you absolutely sure that's the way it is? I'm convinced in my mind that that's the way it is, but I'm not going to tell you that that's the way 100% it is. So, questions? Comments? I'm comfortable with that. So we've got about 10 minutes left, so now we can get to the questions and answers. Chapter 9, the question and answer session was set up in 2 sections, but it was all in chapter 9. So let's just see how far we can get. Somebody take question number 1.
From the writings of what prophet the books of Daniel gained understanding as to the number of years required to accomplish the desolations at Jerusalem.
Jeremiah, we emphasized that a few times. What period of time was specified by Jeremiah and quoted by Daniel? 70 years. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah in the days of Josiah. The word of the Lord also came to Jeremiah in the days of Jehoiakim, blank, son of Josiah and king of Judah, from 597 to 586 until the carrying away of captivity. Who was the last king? Zedekiah. Number 5 is very interesting. What signs of humility did Daniel exhibit when praying to the Lord? Fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. That was their way of doing things. Number 6. In the prayer, Daniel confirms that God keeps covenant, mercy to them that love him and keep his commandments. We can find that in the New Testament, can't we? John 14:15, 15:14. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. On the night he was betrayed, Jesus confirmed to his disciples, he hath commandments and keepeth them. Daniel acknowledges sin and guilt by stating, you know, I think every day many of the people in the world today could say that same thing and be accurate. Daniel continues by stating, neither have we hearkened to thy servant the prophets, which spoke in thy name to our kings, princes, fathers, and people. Number 10, because of the sins of Israel, a blank was poured upon them. I think I heard it. Curse. God, speaking through Moses, told the people, these curses shall come upon them. Number 12, Israel's punishment for disobedience are listed in Deuteronomy and are all inclusive, afflicting the land, the nation, the people. Perhaps the most severe of these curses is the practice of eating what? The flesh of their children. Again, this even happened in the New Testament in AD 70 when the temple, when Jerusalem was surrounded before the final destruction, they were down to eating kids. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Daniel pleads for mercy, remembering that God had brought the people out of the land Daniel asks that the Lord, according to his righteousness, will turn away his anger and fury from the city Jerusalem. And I love this next one, number 16. He summarizes his plea how? Hear, forgive, hearken, and do. Take action. What does the word hearken really mean? Digest it, absorb it. Yeah. Number 17, and now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, love him and serve him. If we today did that one question there, if we put that into action, if we walked in all God's ways today, if we loved him, truly loved him, and we served him with all our heart and soul, is there any question in anybody's mind where you would wind up after the day of judgment? That's all that's required of us. Because the next question gets down to the meat of the matter. We can find it in Matthew and in Mark and in Deuteronomy. We're to, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with what? All thy heart, soul, mind, and in Mark it adds strength. Here it just left you with 3, but and then we've already covered this one, John 14:15, love and keep his commandments. And also in 1 John 5:3, the next question, 20, the Apostle John wrote, for this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. Brother Day is going out to ring a bell. We'll get into just a few more questions in dealing with part 2. While Daniel was still praying, who touched him? Gabriel. What did he state as the reason for his coming? And what did he say of Daniel? Give him skill, understanding, knowledge, and that he was highly esteemed. How many weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city? 70. The 70 weeks are blank by God. Number 4. The 70 weeks are determined by God. As Brother Day had mentioned earlier, God put all this into play. And then we emphasize this next part here when I read through it, but question number 5, the 70 weeks are decreed to accomplish the following 6 results. And what are they? To finish transgression, make an end of sins, make reconciliation for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up and anoint the Most High, the Holy One. Got them all? To finish the transgressions means to hold back, to hold in, to arrest, or to hold in prison, to shut in, etc. John 3:5 says, have been born of the water and the Spirit, have the kingdom of God within them, and are led by the Spirit. Let's skip down to number 8. To make reconciliation for iniquity. Acts 3:19 says that sins may be what? Blotted out. The way we're answering our questions now, I think I should have said last week that this lesson covered both part 1 and part 2. I don't think most of you got to answering part 2. Sorry? But the last question I'm going to do is part B of number 8, that sins and iniquities will be remembered no more. And that's in Hebrews 8, verse 12. I got to get up here this week sometime and either figure out how to change that or destroy it and buy another one. So, thank y'all for your attention and your comments.